Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 4 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. And in the last one, you get to see how good my Spanish is from somebody who's never spoken a word of Spanish his whole life. Spoiler alert, it's horrible. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. If you have a story you'd like to submit to the podcast, you can do so by email at karmastoriespod@gmail.com. Alright, on to today's stories. Let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Atomic File. Don't like the way I park? Fine, I'll follow the rules exactly. A couple of months ago, I had a run-in with the self-appointed HOA enforcer of my neighborhood. Let's call her Linda. For context, I don't live in an HOA community, but Linda likes to pretend we do. She's the kind of person who leaves passive-aggressive notes on cars, knocks on doors to complain about lawn heights, and calls the city for violations that don't actually exist. The issue started because I parked my car on the street in front of my house. It's perfectly legal, and I've been doing it for years without any complaints. But apparently, Linda decided that my car was an eyesore. One day, I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper that said, "This is not a parking lot. Park in your driveway like a respectful neighbor. Don't make me involve the city." It annoyed me, but I shrugged it off and kept parking where I always do. That wasn't good enough for Linda. The next time, she confronted me in person. "I've told you before, parking in the street is inconsiderate. You have a driveway, use it." It's legal to park there, and I'm not blocking anything. "It doesn't matter. It's ugly and makes the neighborhood look bad. Park in your driveway or I'll report you." That's when I decided, fine. If she wants me to park in my driveway, I'll park in my driveway, but I'll follow every single rule to the letter. You see, my driveway is small. If I park my car in it, it blocks the sidewalk. Technically, it's against city ordinances to obstruct the sidewalk. So the next day, I pulled my car right into my driveway, perfectly centered, and guess what? It completely blocked the sidewalk. It didn't take long for Linda to notice. She marched up to my door, red-faced and furious. "You can't block the sidewalk, that's illegal." "Oh, I thought you wanted me to park in my driveway." "Not like that, park properly." "There's no other way to park in my driveway without blocking the sidewalk. Guess I'll have to park back on the street then." Her face was priceless. She sputtered for a moment before stomping off. Thinking that was the end of it, I parked back on the street. But no, Linda wasn't done yet. She actually called the city on me. A week later, a city inspector came by. He checked out the situation, saw that my car was legally parked on the street, and told me I was doing nothing wrong. However, he did mention that Linda had made several complaints about code violations in the neighborhood, and they were getting tired of her nonsense. After that, I didn't hear from Linda for a while, until last week when she started parking her car on the street in front of my house. So I did what any good neighbor would do. I called the city and reported it. Turns out her car was slightly too close to a fire hydrant. She got a ticket. Malicious Compliance never felt so sweet. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Joe Wee. It says, "Not gonna lie, I thought you were going to park in front of her house. Her getting a ticket is even better." OP responded and said, "I thought about doing that. I didn't want to cause more trouble." Responding to OP, a user called BK Turf said, "Next time she parks in front of your house, but not too close to the fire hydrant, get a couple of jacks and move it closer to the fire hydrant so she gets another ticket." Okay, I really love this story because Karen across the street kept on trying to get OP ticketed by reporting them, but Karen is the one that ended up with the ticket themselves. That right there is some poetic justice. Think about it too, if Karen pisses off the inspectors too much, they're gonna give her a ticket for parking close to the fire hydrant, even if that fire hydrant is like 3 blocks away. This story comes to us from Who Knows My One Name. Oh, we're changing procedures again? You got it. I work in tech support, but basically a call center fixing computer problems. So when someone calls, we record their information. Everything from their name, to the reason for the call, to the solution. During a team meeting, one of my higher-ups, we'll call her Paula, announces if a client calls back about the same problem in a short time, whoever ultimately fixes it gets full credit for the work. For context, I'm not here to be super IT. I don't care about the credit. I work my 8 hours a day and collect my check. That's it. One day, I get a call. The client says they were just on the phone with someone else, and they told them to call right back. I look up the coworker's name, John. He just went to lunch. I ask the client if they want me to transfer them to John's voicemail. They say, "Can you just help me?" No problem. I'm familiar with their problem and fix it in 20 minutes. I adjust the record for the problem to my name. I add John's name as a footnote so he still gets partial credit. Fast forward, John gets back from lunch, comes up to me and demands to know why I took his name off the record. Tells me he spent an hour on the phone with that client and he would appreciate it if I would let him know if I touch his records. Mind you, John and I don't speak. He's cold towards me and we only interact when absolutely necessary. Today, he doesn't even say hello, he just starts in on me. I wait a moment and calmly explain how I got the call, the client didn't want to wait, and how I followed procedure. I also pointed out that I added John's name as a footnote for partial credit, which is not required to do. John says, "Oh, I didn't see that," and leaves. No apology, just a mumbled thanks as he walks away. In our next team meeting, our boss tells us from now on, whoever speaks to the client first gets full credit. I asked her to please clarify because Paula told us otherwise. She reiterates the announcement and says, "This is how we're doing it, I hope that makes sense," and quickly moves on. I can see where this came from, but I hold my peace. More background, John's approach is to rush through calls to increase his calls taken metric. My approach is to make sure the client is taken care of before the call ends. So a few weeks go by and things took an unexpected turn for John. When a client calls back for a problem that was previously marked fixed, I restart the record and only add my footnote. This causes the record to go back into the original agent's workflow for processing. Since John doesn't take the time to read the footnotes, he's reaching out to me for updates before he marks the record fixed again. I take my time to respond because I've already made the info available in my footnote. Not only that, some problems require him to call the client back to confirm the problem is actually fixed. He went from talking to me once a quarter to once a week, so now he's doing twice, sometimes 3 times the work, all because he wanted full credit for partial results. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Xaviria. It says, "Stupid policy. First agent who doesn't resolve the issue is creating rework for the customer to have to call back. Customers are not happy when this happens. Take as long as needed and fix the effing issue the first time." OP responded to this one and said, "I agree, which is why I take my approach. I want to solve that problem upon first contact with the client, even if I have to bring a more experienced or senior agent on the line with me." Another commenter down below called Chimo Inger says, "It sounds like you're doing work that he gets credit for, so not exactly a win for you." OP responded and said, "On the contrary, I get partial credit for it, so now there is a paper trail that I'm helping John on an increased number of his clients. With the previous procedures, that wasn't the case. Remember, I'm just here to make my wages. This puts me in a better position for a raise since it now shows I'm doing the work of more than one person, and doing it well." Oh my gosh, do I ever not miss the call center politics. I did about 8 years of call center work when I was younger, and in fact I met my wife in one of them, which is probably the only good thing that really came out of all my call center experience. Also, have you noticed when people talk about working in a call center, it almost sounds like they were in prison? Like I just said, I did 8 years in call centers, That statement alone sounds like prison, but also if you think about it, you're stuck in a cubicle, in a building that usually doesn't have very many windows, under strict rules that you have to stay on the phones and not do anything else, otherwise you will get reprimanded. This story comes to us from Aim Rich. Describe the food? You got it, boss. Many moons ago, I worked in a restaurant that is part of a national chain named after a fruit and insect. I had put in my 2 weeks notice after finding a better position elsewhere, and we were about to slightly tweak our menu, and so we're having mandatory staff meetings to acquaint ourselves with the new food. The only time that we could schedule these meetings was in the morning prior to the restaurant opening so that all the staff could attend. As a closing bartender who would sometimes be there until 2 or 3 a.m. cleaning up, I did not relish having to turn around and go back to work just for an hour-long untipped, earning just minimum wage meeting on less than 6 hours of sleep. Since I was on my way out the door and would not be employed by them when the new menu actually started, I asked my boss if I actually had to come to these meetings. He told me, if you want to work your remaining scheduled shifts, you do. Being a college student who lived paycheck to paycheck, I could not afford to lose out on a week and a half wages, so I sucked it up and went. Part of the rollout was a booklet we were supposed to fill out about the menu items, which included the prompt, "How would you describe this dish?" Presumably, you were supposed to come up with a clever, tantalizing romanticization of the item. Stuff like, "It's a 1/4 pound of Angus beef, smothered by melted cheese and tender onions." But there were no specifics about what you could or should not write. Cue Malicious Compliance. I sat slightly out of my manager's line of sight and looked up the nutritional values of the menu items from our corporate website on my phone. I filled my notebook out as follows. The classic bacon cheeseburger has 1,320 calories, 140% of your daily saturated fat, 28 grams, and 124% of your daily sodium, 2,860 milligrams. The BS Mushroom Swiss Burger has 1,580 calories, 155% of the daily recommended saturated fat, 31 grams, and 126% of your recommended sodium, 3,100 milligrams. The Quesadilla Burger has 1,580 calories, 190% of your daily saturated fat, 38 grams, and 191% of your daily recommended sodium intake, 3,470 milligrams, etc. The next day, my boss called me into the office to discuss my booklet. He asked, "Are these the real nutritional fact numbers?" I replied, "You're the manager, you should know," but yes, I pulled them right off the company website. He said something along the lines of, "God, that's disgusting. I should be looking for a new job too. We shouldn't be selling this crap." I worked the end of my shifts, then came back as a customer a week or two later. I proceeded to order a pitcher of the strongest beer we had on tap for myself, and then loudly played trivia with some of the bar regulars who were my buddies, asking them the same nutritional facts about the food. The bartender, my former coworker who was a stuck-up bee, kept giving me dirty looks, but she couldn't say crap to me since I wasn't the loudest one in the group, and we weren't discussing anything vulgar. Note to everyone, the food at Apricot Beetles is really unhealthy. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Spinner of Yarn. It says, "I think your manager's reaction is hilarious, but I think anyone who eats at the Fruit and Bee restaurant isn't doing it to follow a weight loss program." Another commenter down below called Cool Beans Chili said, "That's the perfect way to describe it. Another good way would have been to figure out the chemical compositions of each food. Like for each ingredient in the food, list out the actual chemical elements they are made of, and in what proportions. Then, I would have put that list into a binder to bring to work, and I would have started droning on about the chemicals whenever I could. Did I work in food service with asinine policies like this? Yes. Am I glad that I don't work in food service any longer? Also, yes." Opie responded to this one and said, "Laugh out loud, yes. I'm not sciencey enough to do that confidently, but it would have been good as well. One time, I got secret shopped, unannounced quality control visit, and got a perfect score. However, they said I sounded mechanical and rehearsed. What else does corporate expect when they require me to offer a perfect margarita, soup and salad, and maple butter blondie to each and every table? You bet your butt I had a script, and yes, I was mechanical and rehearsed, after saying the same stupid crap 45 times a night. I completely agree with the first commenter. Unfortunately, people aren't going to a place like this to eat healthy food, and pretty much every fast food joint out there has food that is extremely high in fat and extremely high in sodium, like stupidly high in sodium, which is horrible for you. I'm sure the vast majority of you are familiar with the BK original chicken sandwich. That thing has like 31.5 grams of fat and 1200 milligrams of sodium. That is absolutely nuts for something that is so tiny. This story comes to us from Dapper Captain 5261. Tell you what this song is about? Okay, but you're gonna have to sit down for this. Okay, a quick note from Rob here before I start this one. I don't know any Spanish except what Dora's taught me on TV when my kids are watching it. I've looked up the pronunciations of the words in this story, but I guarantee you I'm going to butcher them. So, I want you to let me have it in the comments and let me know just how bad it was. Alright, on to the story. So, I have a coworker who would put Spanish music on in the back of house, and it would be the most raunchiest trap music ever. Bad Bunny, Carol Ha, El Alfa kinda raunchy. Even some merengue and bachata hits are insane when I hear it as an adult. And yes, there would be people just ignoring the music, and then there would be others that want a translation. Well, the Latina coworker doesn't speak English really well, so she wasn't able to explain it, so they look at me for answers. I would usually tell them that it's just a bunch of nonsense, and the songs are designed for you to turn up, and that would usually get them to leave me alone. Not this nosy coworker though. She was keen to know what a certain song was about. When I told her my usual spiel, she didn't want to hear it. She wants to know the meaning behind the song Mesa que Masa Plata and why the singer keeps saying sock sock socks. I told her that we, Latinos, don't look too deep into the lyrics, but if she wants to know, the guy isn't saying sock sock socks, he's saying za sa sa, which means absolutely nothing at all. And when he said La mesa que Masa Plata le mando a la niña, he's saying the table that claps the loudest gets the girl. She was instantly uncomfortable, but nah sis, if you want to know so much, I'm gonna explain it further. I told her that they play the song in strip clubs, birthday parties, weddings, communions, quinceaneras, and just any random occasion. So for the rest of the shift, I would tell her what every song was about just to make her uncomfortable. El Baneo is about this guy gaslighting his girl after she heard rumors about him being a player. Obsession is about this guy being a creep towards this girl who doesn't want him, and he's trying to convince her to leave her man for him. Cuatro K is just a raunchy song about giving it to these hoes in 4K. And by the time I left, she looked like she could have lived the rest of her life without knowing all that. I can't wait to tell her what Delinquente is about tomorrow. I bet she'll clutch her pearls. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Gina Terra. It says, funny how many people were shocked when they finally read the lyrics to Despacito, and that's pretty tame. Another user down below called Reacts with Words said, you should make her happy and play some songs in English, like Closer by 9 Inch Nails and The Bad Touch by Bloodhound Gang. Let's be honest here, in any language there are going to be songs that are raunchy and inappropriate depending on the setting that you're in. Although it does seem like some of the languages have songs that are a little bit more raunchy than the others. But I'll leave that up to you guys to determine which ones they are. Let me know what you figure out in the YouTube comments down below. Also, how was my Spanish on this one? I'd love for you to let me know. Comment down below on YouTube. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to your favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.